Well, thanks for joining me for this webcast. I'm really looking forward to spending time with you and being able to share some really useful ideas with you on current trends in neurolinguistic programming, NLP, and life coaching. Why do I connect the two? And the reason why is real simple. Rarely have I met a person, although I have met a few, who hold themselves out as an NLP practitioner offering neurolinguistic programming, where people make an appointment with the NLP practitioner to get NLP. Rather, NLP is a set of strategies that are effective tools for helping people communicate, helping people to connect, and helping people to live life at their highest level of peak performance. These are skills that come from replicating the success of others that have gone before us. And one of the central ideas in neurolinguistic programming is the idea of the exemplar. Who can we model so that we can follow the patterns of this person and replicate the success? I talk about NLP in the context of life coaching often, and the reason why, as I said, people don't really make an appointment with an NLP practitioner. Once we learn NLP, it almost always has to be within the context of some other service or at least some other profession. So NLP is widely used in the context of politics, in the construct of leadership development. NLP is certainly used by those in authority positions, whether it's teachers or whether it's trainers, whether it's mentors in the corporate structure. NLP is used often by hypnotherapists. The strategies of NLP often are strategies that replicated the early successful medical hypnotherapists, Milton Erickson being the primary name. And many hypnotists use NLP as a strategy within the context of their hypnotherapy. Therapists, psychotherapists often use the concepts or the ideas of NLP to create a practical strategy for their clients to practice stepping into success and being able to overcome the problems that brought them to the office in the first place. I often talk about NLP in the context of life coaching because in the last 40 years, 50 years, not only has neurolinguistic programming exploded in both its acceptance and its use, but so has life coaching, which came on the field, if you want to call it that, probably about 40 years ago in its earliest incarnations as well. This is where an individual holds themselves out as an expert, not doing psychotherapy. Life coaches traditionally aren't helping people who are in crisis return to an adequate level of functioning, but rather they're individuals who are working with people who are at an adequate level of functioning and helping them arise to their highest level of peak performance in their families, within themselves, within their communities, within their jobs, and in a number of different settings as well. So life coaching becomes a great context for neurolinguistic programming. It provides a structure to the life coach, so the life coach knows what to do in the sessions when they're working with clients. And it also provides a set of resources and strategies for the individual who wants to make change in their business, in their family, in their community, and within themselves. The good thing about NLP is that NLP practitioners first practice transforming themselves using the strategies and techniques outlined earliest by John Grinder and Richard Bandler back in the very earliest days of neurolinguistic programming, and apply those in a way that can help themselves, help you to rise to your highest level of potential. So the good news here is that in this webinar, you're not only going to learn how to help other people rise to their level of peak performance, but you're actually going to learn some strategies in this hour that are going to be particularly useful to you. I'm talking about new NLP in this webcast. And the reason why I'm talking about new NLP is in the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, a lot of exemplars have come along whose ideas we can pattern, whose ideas we can emulate, whose success we can step into when we know how to do that. Now, I've written a couple things up here on the board, and I will provide some board notes for you because I realize you can't read my handwriting. But a lot of people have the idea when I talk about new NLP, out with the old and in with the new. It is not that. In fact, I've written in traditional 1990s speak here, not. We're going to retain the classic ideas of neurolinguistic programming in our trainings. but we're going to look at new research, new information, new ideas, and new exemplars, and ask how can we apply the models of NLP to solving the problems in the current era, using the strategies with new exemplars that we know work based on our earliest experiences with NLP. So we're going to retain the old ideas, but we're going to be adding to it a cadre of new ideas so that we can transform ourselves and create transformation then in others. This is actually pretty exciting. What I call this really is dynamic NLP. It's NLP for the current era, for 2021, for 2022, for the current era that we're living in, so that we can solve the modern problems that we have and be able to do that in a way that, that is most effective. A lot of people have made a significant adjustment to the way they learn. They're now learning at home because of our current era, because of our experience with COVID. A lot of educators are learning how to teach online, and teaching online is entirely different than teaching in a classroom. How can we take the principles of learning and how can we take the principles of educating within the context of NLP skills, apply it to our current problem? That's really what this course is all about. By the way, I'm referring to, I did a webinar previous to this last month. I will probably continue to do ongoing quarterly NLP free webcasts, but I'm offering an NLP life coach certification that begins next month. You have the opportunity to actually join a 9-week intensive online learning experience where you can get ICBCH certified in both professional life coaching as well as neuro-linguistic programming. So if you're interested in finding out more about the in-depth program that we offer, there's a button right down here below this video. You can click on it at any time and you can find more about this opportunity you have to take this comprehensive training that's offered right here at NLPcertificationboard.com. But we're also going to talk about current coaching models and current regulation. The field of coaching has changed, how it is that we deliver services. State legislative bodies and regulatory agencies have looked at the division of psychotherapy and life coaching and begun to ask questions about whether or not life coaches are duplicating the work of psychotherapy. And we want to make sure that when we're offering services to people who want to move to their highest level of peak performance, that we're doing it in the context of the current regulatory environment and in the context of what we now know about life coaching, which is its own unique and distinct profession, different from that of psychotherapy. We're also going to be talking about a lot of new stuff in the last 40 years. I'm going to be talking in this webcast about Chase Hughes' work in body language. In this webcast, we're going to take a look at an old figure historically in public relations, Edward Bernays, Sigmund Freud's nephew. And we're going to be looking at some of the old ideas in persuasion and public relations from the new perspective of neuro-linguistic programming. In this webcast today, we're going to take a look at Robert Caldini's work on influence. Robert Caldini hadn't written his books. He's a professor at Arizona State University. And he didn't write these books are new. And so they weren't looked at by NLP in the early days. But NLP practitioners are interested in influencing people in positive ways. And Caldini's work gives us a set of patterns that we can replicate to influence people in positive ways. So we're going to be looking at a couple of different things in this webcast that are really the modern embodiment of applying neuro-linguistic programming and how we can bring those ideas into coaching people, whether that coaching is life coaching, individual coaching, whether it's coaching teams, whether it's corporate environments, or even in the family. One of my favorite things, and many of you know I have children, has been to use the principles of NLP and coaching within my family so that my family can do well together. We can use these same principles and techniques in our community as well. We're going to be taking a look today at cognitive neuroscience. This is one of those things that wasn't addressed in early neurolinguistic programming. There were assumptions made about how the mind works. We have a body of knowledge now that we didn't have before. We're going to be taking a look at new exemplars, like I said, Caldini, Chase Hughes, and others. And we're going to take a look at the documentation that we need in the current era of life coaching in order to really make clear what type of services that we're providing. Now, I've been doing NLP, I've been doing life coaching, I've been doing professional hypnotherapy. I'm also licensed as a marriage and family therapist, as a mental health professional for going on 30 years now. And I'm going to be sharing with you my experience as well. I'm going to be sharing with you the structure of success, the patterns of progress, assessment of appropriateness, and a meta-theoretical approach that can take the body of knowledge that we've developed in neurolinguistic programming and apply it to today's context. So I'm really glad that you've joined me, because I'm looking forward to sharing all of these ideas with you over the next couple of minutes. When we think of the foundations of NLP, sort of the classics in NLP, there's far more than what I've written here on the board. We're often talking about the presuppositions. You see, neurolinguistic programming really isn't built on a bunch of theories. It's actually based on what works in the real world. Bandler and Grinder were famous for saying, if it works, it's NLP. So what we're doing here is we're looking for people who have the desired outcomes, and then we're figuring out if what they did to reach that outcome worked. And NLP really isn't based on a lot of theory. This is one of the things that makes it really difficult to sort of put to the academic test with peer-reviewed journals. You see, peer-reviewed studies, they take a look at the theories and test the hypothesis. But in NLP, we really don't have any hypothesis. What we have is we have the experiences of people who have gone before us. It's very practical. Now, in the earliest days of neurolinguistic programming, the creators of NLP were so excited to be able to replicate the successes of Virginia Satir, the successes of medical hypnotherapist Milton Erickson, the successes of psychologist and psychotherapist Fritz Perls, as well as others who they studied. And they were excited to share those outcomes without giving much attention to the philosophical basis. What's happened in the last 40 or 50 years, which we really don't spend too much time focusing on in teaching NLP, is that we've learned the psychobiology of behavioral responses, of emotional responses. We now understand the mind-body connection. People like the work of Bruce Lipton, people who have written on this subject, both in academia as well as in popular psychology. And we now understand the importance of our brain, the literal brain, in creating the ability to access and replicate the patterns of success which NLP has shared and discovered. So I love talking about neurolinguistic programming within the context of acceptance and commitment therapy, within the context of mindfulness-based stress reduction. One of the things we know about the mind is that the mind is not primed to stay in the present moment. Because of evolutionary biology, our mind looks at the past and it tries to predict the future. And it's always scanning the past to make a decision about the future. This is the way the mind works. But we have the ability to create practice and utilize techniques like mindfulness-based stress reduction that can teach a person to do what the brain is not naturally inclined to do, and that is to live fully in the present moment. The result of this is people handle stress better. They handle decision-making better. They handle relationships better, and it's more likely that they'll be able to step into their intentions and their dreams. Classic NLP really focused on the primary representational systems. You can think of this in the context of the five senses, right? Olfactory, taste, gustatory, smell. Now, most people aren't olfactory or gustatory learners, but they're usually an auditory, a visual, or a kinesthetic learner. Kinesthetic, tactile, feeling, touching. So these five senses really are how we experience the world around us. And the earliest writers in NLP recognized the value of being able to determine a person's primary representational system. Are they functioning as an auditory learner and experiencer? Are they functioning as a visual learner and experiencer? Do they experience the world around them from an auditory perspective? Now, how do you know if you're auditory, visual, or kinesthetic? Or if somebody you're working with is auditory, visual, or kinesthetic? I put it in context of the modern era and IKEA furniture. I just recently moved. As a matter of fact, my office is a mess because I just moved. The moving truck came a week ago. And so I'm still actually unpacking stuff in my new house with my new office here. And I live, for those of you who are curious, in Katy, Texas now. I lived in Las Vegas for a number of years, but I'm back home in Texas, which is where I was actually born. So it's good to be back and it's good to be unpacking. But when it comes to moving, I bought some furniture. Now, I didn't buy any IKEA furniture this time, but we've all bought IKEA furniture at one point or another in our lives. You know, the kind of furniture that comes in boxes, you have to unpack it and you have to build it yourself, assemble the bookshelf, assemble the table, put it together. I made a policy when I moved into this house that I'm now officially old enough that I won't assemble any of my own furniture. There was actually one thing I did purchase. It was a giant toilet paper rack holder for behind the toilet, and that came in a box and I had to actually build it myself. How can building IKEA furniture help us determine what representational system we have? Well, the auditory learner, the person whose primary representational system, they experience the world by hearing things, by saying things. They're the person who reads the directions because the directions are literally heard in their mind. The visual person, they take the box, they take the picture that's on the box, they look at all the pieces and they try to build what they see. That's, of course, the visual learner. And then you have the kinesthetic learner, the kinesthetic experiencer. They're the person who takes the pieces, touches them, feels the painted side and the unfinished side. They align those together. They see which is heavier. That must be the bigger piece. That must be the smaller piece. And they build it by feeling it. So the way you build IKEA furniture actually can reveal what your primary representational system is. Our primary representational system is important though, because our clients are experiencing their problems from an auditory perspective, whether it's self-talk or the messages imposed by others. They're experiencing it visually. They're seeing their future either in a negative way or in a positive way, or they feel their emotions weighing them down, or a lightness and a power of success. And so the early NLP practitioners really focused on being able to assess the client's primary representational system, and then encouraged us to be congruent so that we were able to work within the skill sets they had to help them achieve their greatest level of potential. The problem with that idea is that it's rather limiting. It's limiting because our clients are going to go back into the real world, and the real world is auditory. It is kinesthetic. It is visual. It is olfactory. It is gustatory. There are multiple sensorial experiences. So when I have a client who, yes, their visual acuity is high, but their kinesthetic acuity is low, I try to work with them to help increase their kinesthetic acuity. When my clients have a low level of auditory acuity and a high level of kinesthetic acuity, rather than simply trying to match their kinesthetic awareness, I try to help them learn how to increase their auditory acuity so they can operate in a holistic way in the world around them. These are the ideas and the strategies that I think we can take to the next level by looking at NLP in the context of modern approaches. The idea of rapport, of course, is central to helping other people. Whether you're a hypnotist, a psychotherapist, whether you're a business leader, whether you're a boss, whether you're a parent, whether you're a good community member. In order to influence other people, we have to engage them. And the easiest way to engage people is to create rapport with people. And neurolinguistic programming training is always focused on the skills of rapport. Those skills are skills that we've learned to improve in the last 10 or 15 or 20 years. Italian researchers have shared with us the science of proxemics, what it simply means to attend or to be with somebody and the impact that has on them. We literally respond psychophysiologically to the presence of other people. This tells me how I can increase my rapport building skills by understanding proxemics and my relationship to the relationships of other people. These ideas weren't around 40 or 50 years ago, but they're ideas we can put to use now. In our office, how do we position ourselves with clients? I do my pre-talk because I position myself as a hypnotherapist and as a life coach, often at my front table. So my client feels safe because there's some space between me and them. When comfort and rapport is built, we move to the hypnotic furniture, to the recliner, where I sit in my chair, actually a chair very similar to this, near them, closer to them, sharing trance experiences with them. In fact, I don't view myself as doing hypnosis to anybody or doing therapy to anybody or doing coaching to anybody. I view myself as sharing trance with them or sharing expertise with them or sharing the resources that have helped me to transform and help the clients I work with transform so that they can get the benefits that others who have gone before them have. In classic NLP, we talk about patterns, replicating success. One of my favorite books in NLP is a book by Shlomo Vaknin. His name is fun to say. It's 350 NLP patterns. I've recommended it to lots of people over the years. And it's really an encyclopedia of replicable patterns. Everything ranging from an ecology check to determine if a person really wants to make a change. And that's important in coaching. What are the goals that the client has for themselves? This is the heart of life coaching, helping people to reach what they believe their greatest level of potential is. Patterns are replicatable, patterns of really success that can come in overcoming difficult emotions, becoming motivated, building a set of resource states that are of value to me. All of these things are the ideas of NLP patterns. And some of the classic patterns, you may have heard of them, the swish pattern, the 6-step reframe. These are all great classic NLP patterns. But the question is, what new patterns can we develop? And can we develop in multiple professions? One of my favorite things to do is talk about NLP in the context of sales. Can we look at exemplars who are exceptional salespeople? Anyone ranging from Zig Ziglar to Victor, can't remember Victor's last name right now, but he's at the top of the sales training game right now, and can create a pattern from these folks, because these weren't looked at in early NLP. But if I want to be a successful salesperson, I need to look at the modern exemplars in this industry or any other industry and ask, can these steps to success be distilled down into a formula or a pattern, taught to other people, and then replicated? The answer to that is almost always yes. Neurological levels deal with the who, the what, the when, the how. These are classic concepts in NLP, as are language patterns. Last month, I made available to everybody a guide to the Ericksonian language patterns that are used as a foundation for NLP in persuasion, in communication, in creating alliances with other people. If you don't have that resource, I'll actually put it here on this page so you can get it. It's actually a tremendous resource. You can open up that PDF, you can print it out. It's about 15 pages of information. But language changes. The same language that we use today was not available 40 years ago, 50 years ago. They say that in 50 years, 20% of the common language, the everyday language that people use, has changed from what it was in previous years. How do we know this is true? Read an old book. The language is archaic. And the language patterns that were studied in early NLP and are still taught in many classes are not necessarily the language patterns that people are using today. I want to share with you now some specific ideas from some exemplars that I think can give us a modern approach and a modern understanding of neurolinguistic in the context of life coaching. These are some tremendous ideas, but I do want to invite you to attend the 9-week double ICBCH certification as a NLP practitioner and as a professional life coach. This is an exciting opportunity to join me and to join other like-minded individuals who are from the field sales, from the field of therapy, from the field of community development, from the field of leadership, who all want to practice the learnings that are available to us in the modern era to make NLP and the work that we do in coaching with other individuals as effective as possible. That class starts next month. Right here on this page below this video, you can find out more information about that class, because I would love to see you there in our online VIP Learning Center for this exciting 9-week ICBCH certification course in both NLP, as an NLP practitioner and as a professional life coach. Many of you have read Chase Hughes' book titled The Ellipsis Manual. How do I know that? Because it's the best-selling book in hypnotherapy. It's the best-selling book on body language. It's one of the best-selling books in law enforcement. It is a fantastic book written by a military intelligence specialist, Chase Hughes, who shares his 20 years of experience in studying body language in interrogations and in leadership and a whole lot of different venues. Chase shares some ideas that can help us to develop rapport, back to the classic NLP idea. The ideas of influence, the language patterns that create success. But NLP is largely dependent on language. John Grinder, the co-creator of neurolinguistic programming, was a linguistics professor. So it makes sense that we focused in early NLP on the spoken word. Chase Hughes is an expert in body language, what it is that people are saying, with the gestures, with the motions, with the placing of their body, their eyes, both their conscious as well as their subconscious gesturing and movement, and how that can help us to become a more effective communicator, a more effective parent, a more effective teacher, a more effective politician, a more effective friend, and a more effective life coach, and a more effective clinician. Let's take a look at some of Chase Hughes' ideas, and I have good news for you. If you do choose to attend my 9-week certification course, in our Zoom practice sessions, Chase Hughes is going to be our guest in one of these sessions. He's a fantastic guy to have the chance to get to know, and what's great is he will share with you a ton of fantastic resources. But let's take a look at some of the ideas that Chase Hughes has developed in the last 20 years of studying this and published in his recent book, The Ellipsis Manual, that can help you to help other individuals reach their highest level of performance as you also reach your highest level of performance. I suppose we could call this 5 suppositions or 5 pillars of nonverbal communication and body language from Chase Hughes. First of all, he talks about the 3 types of body language. And a lot of people become interested in body language, but they're afraid they have to learn a whole new body language vocabulary. Chase assures us that in his many years of communication, nonverbal communication studies, that there are really only 3 types of body language. There's either opening, or there's closing, or there's aggressive communication. Aggressive body language, opening body language, and closing body language. I had an interesting discussion with Chase about what we talked about in our previous webinar, the idea of the scrolls of Grey Guza, the Tao, the ancient idea that whether a door is open or closed, there's opportunity on both. And Chase teaches that when we understand that all body language comes down to either opening or closing or aggression, that we can then find ourselves on the right side of the door to interact in a way that builds rapport, builds alliances, can help us to problem solve and to influence other people and to put ourselves in a position of authority in situations where prior to this, we might not have had that. Sound like it would be useful in parenting, teaching? Absolutely. The second principle of Chase Hughes is that we often observe on accident. Deliberate observation puts you light years ahead of other people. Practicing the art of observation. And the art of observation actually begins by observing yourself. So we can go back to an ancient practice of yoga. We can actually learn the body scan meditation. It'll teach us to begin to observe other people. We can go to Milton Erickson's method of self-hypnosis, which was to sit before a mirror for 20 minutes in silence, simply reflecting on your observation of the self in that mirror. If you've never utilized that as a self-hypnosis technique, let me encourage you to do that. It's really remarkable what the results of that 20-minute session can be. And of course, if you do this multiple times, you'll discover that there's something really deep about observing the self. When we practice observing the self, we can then begin to observe other people. NLP has always talked about the observer self. Meditation talks about the observer self. And Chase Hughes ties it all together for us in the context of body language. If I want to be good at understanding other people, I have to be good at understanding myself. Chase talks about fear. Chase talks about fear making us move faster. He gives a solution to the natural inclination to move faster when we have fear, and that is that if you want to build trust with an individual, make the decision that you're never going to move faster in your conversation or your presentation than you can if you are underwater. In other words, if you never move faster than you can move underwater, you won't be broadcasting the nonverbal message of fear or of a lack of confidence. And the result is other people will be drawn into you and trust will be created. These simple strategies that Chase has articulated in his research and in his book, The Ellipsis Manual, are really useful tools that can help us to become more effective NLP practitioners and more effective life coaches guiding other people. Chase also talks about how it is that we position ourselves and other people to make decision. We ask people to make decision in parenting. We ask people to make decision in sales. We ask people to make decision in psychotherapy. We ask people to make a decision in leadership. We ask people to make a decision in life coaching. And Chase points something out that's really important. Never ask a person to take an action or make a decision while their back is against the chair. Rather, we should have them on the edge of their chair when we ask for commitment, when we ask for change, when we ask for action. Chase gives us some great strategies. I happen to have a box of pens over here, right? My whole box of the new office, the whole box of new markers, right? If I was sitting across from somebody who was leaning into the chair and I was about ready to ask them to make a decision, I might simply say to them, go ahead and take this pen and write down on this paper. They have to lean forward away from the back of their chair. So I'm asking them to get into the position non-verbally with their body language of acceptance, of commitment, of follow-through, of making a decision. This is a strategy that is simple, but the profound nature of these strategies from Chase Hughes, a modern exemplar that we can look at in the context of NLP and life coaching, is truly useful. One of the other strategies that Chase talks about is creating the body language that you need from somebody before you ask any questions. Again, we can hand somebody a pen to have openness. We can ask people through giving them assignments or tasks. And in life coaching, I give all of my clients a lot of homework and a lot of tasks to complete so that they put themselves in the body language of openness. They put themselves in the body language of acceptance. They put themselves in the body language of congruence. They put themselves in the body language of partnership in order to achieve the goals that are important to me. So you can see that even though Chase Hughes, who might not have actually even been born, I don't think he was, when NLP was first discussed, now in his adult life, has revealed for us a tremendous amount of information on body language that we can now use in our sessions and with our clients to create success at the highest levels. Let's talk about Robert Caldini, who is a professor at Arizona State University. He wrote a book on influence. It's titled Influence by Robert Caldini. Now, his book didn't come out until about 1985. He's written numerous books since then. He's a researcher at Arizona State University, and he has, unlike NLP, whose philosophy is, hey, if it works, it's NLP, because he's a university professor, the ideas behind what he's written about are actually based on theoretical foundations. This is really important because I think we need to move NLP into a more research-based approach. At the heart of NLP classes and discussions on the internet is often how do we influence people? Robert Caldini gives us the answer. In his books, he talks about the 6 pillars of, or the 6 elements of truly influencing other people. This can be influencing a community, it can be influencing a large group, it can be influencing another individual one-on-one. His ideas, I think, are particularly useful in a coaching model. Let's take a look at the 6 ideas that are the heart of his 6 rules for influence. They are reciprocity, scarcity, authority, consistency, liking or likability, and consensus. Let's talk about each one of these in the context of NLP and how we can use these as part of a modern approach to NLP patterns. Let's take a look at the first one here, reciprocity. The idea behind reciprocity is I do something for you and you do something for me. This is often used in sales, and sales professionals are of course, interested in the idea of NLP. We can borrow the idea of reciprocity. So if I'm a car salesman, let's say I work at a Honda dealership, I can get some Honda keychains, and I can give it to people when I go on a demo ride. Imagine what it would be like to have your key hanging on this. But here you go, here's a keychain for you. And I gave them something small, a gift. What are they going to give me? They're going to give me a sale. So the idea of reciprocity can be used to motivate people. It can be used to encourage people in a certain direction. It can be used to influence people and achieve the outcomes that we want. We can also use reciprocity simply linguistically. I can say thank you. I can say please. I can use kind language, expecting in return to get kind language. I can use assertive communication. I feel, want, or need blank, expecting in return, this is really important in working with or coaching couples, I can to receive assertive communication back. So the principle of reciprocity is used in a number of different ways in the context of coaching and NLP. The second idea, the idea of scarcity, is really important. In NLP, we talk about motivating people, either a towards motivation, going to something, or an away from motivation. Often it's the away from motivation that's most powerful. People want to flee from scarcity. So scarcity can be used by a coach as a tool for helping people move towards something. Let me give you an example of how that might work. I might say to a client who's trying to make a big decision, let's say it's business coaching, and they're going to be moving forward, and they're going to say yes to a big project. I can remind my client of what scarcity is like. Remember back 20 years ago when you didn't take advantage of the opportunity that was in front of you? What was the result of that experience? Now that you face the same choice, making a decisive decision, do you see that the choice that is obvious, that will have the long-term results that you desire? Bam! I've just used scarcity as a tool for influencing in a positive direction. The third thing on here, authority. Over here on my wall is my wall of authority. Those are my diplomas, and there's a doctorate in transformational leadership from Bakke Graduate University. Yes, Bakke Graduate University is an accredited university. My degree is in cross-cultural engagement. Right below it is actually a certificate, sort of an honorarium or a proclamation from the former governor of Texas, Ann Richards. In 1994, she said, "I was a ray of light to other Texans." So that's hanging over there on the wall. When people walk in my office, they see that wall of authority, those certificates, those diplomas, certification as a professional hypnotist, as a life coach. And they think, Richard knows what he's talking about. Now, I hope that my experience, my many books, and the results that I've had also speak to my authority. But when clients don't know me, that's the first thing they see. That wall of authority is one way to establish authority, but you don't need a lot of certificates, certification certificates, diplomas, degrees, etc., in order to establish authority. You can speak with authority. This goes to both the nonverbal communication that Chase Hughes teaches us, as well as the language patterns that NLP's distilled from Milton Erickson. We can speak to people and we can establish our authority. I always stress to my clients the techniques that we're using come both from my own application of the material and my own self-transformation. I teach my clients the tools that I'm actually using in my own life. And they also come from me seeing the results with the many clients I've worked with. That lets my client know they're not the first one. And the methods that I use are based on the research that we know actually works. In other words, Richard, who's also a professor, understands research and he's using empirically validated ideas. Now, that doesn't mean we won't use experimental or experiential or other ideas in the work that we do, but some of the ideas are coming from a basis of authority in the research. The fourth idea here is consistency. Now, my stepfather was very consistent. We woke up at the same time, we ate at the same time, we did everything at the same time. Consistency was really important when I was growing up. And it's really important to me to this day. I always say you can set a clock by me because I'm usually doing the same thing at the same time on the same days. This actually has helped me, I think, be an effective parent. So if we want to use strategies for influencing our children, consistency is one of those. And a lot of people come to me for business coaching, but really it's the family issues, especially in family-run businesses or back to the current era where people are working at home. The next idea, liking. Likability creates influence. I've always said people really don't vote for the person for president they agree with most. They vote for the person they actually want to go eat lunch with or would be happy eating lunch with most. Likability counts. Likability is really important. Is your hair cut? Do you dress okay? Is your shirt ironed? Do you have a Swiss chronometer? Are you a likable person? Do you use kind language? Do you communicate assertively rather than passive aggressively? All of these, again, are ideas related to likability. Do you ask other people in your rapport building about them? Or are you using self-disclosure in coaching as a primary strategy and actually not asking about them, rather telling about yourself? That's less likable. Now, there's a place for self-disclosure, but it definitely is a balance. And the sixth principle is the idea of consensus and consensus building. In our political climate now, where half the people are red and half the people are blue, and the blue people hate the red ones and the red ones hate the blue people, it seems that there is no consensus. But at many times in our political history, we've come to a point of conflict. And it has always been consensus building that has led the way. Compromise. It has always been listening and attending to others. NLP gives us a whole host of listening skills that we can implement. How it is that we conduct ourselves non-verbally, leaning in. I was taught years ago, solar. Sit down, have open body posture, lean forward, make eye contact, and relax. This establishes rapport and helps us to influence people. These ideas by Caldini are rarely ever talked about in NLP training programs, but I think every one of these ideas is a useful strategy that we can implement in the work that we're doing as we move NLP towards a modern approach that actually helps people with the current era issues that they're facing. So the ideas of neurolinguistic programming were really based on John Grinder and Richard Bandler's observation of three primary characters. This was Virginia Satir, a family therapist in Southern California, Fritz Perls, a psychologist at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and Milton Erickson, a psychiatrist who practiced medical hypnotherapy in Phoenix, Arizona. I've always thought to myself that while these are three excellent exemplars, and as one who is also a licensed therapist, I've really been able to use the ideas derived from those therapists who were successful with their clients to help the individuals who I've worked with. And I've appreciated the history of NLP that was founded essentially on these three exemplars, as well as some others. But the reality is there are multiple exemplars in multiple professions. There are people in sales. There are people in community development. There are people in parenting. There are people in politics. There are people in leadership whose work we can model in order to create success. And I think a modern approach to NLP asks the question, who else could be an exemplar, and what patterns of neurolinguistic programming can we create or utilize from these individuals? It's interesting that, well, Milton Erickson, Virginia Satir, and Fritz Perls were fantastic exemplars. One of the focuses of NLP early on was really influence. And yet, I've never seen anything written in any of the early NLP books that was based on Edward Bernays' work. Now, some of you have heard that name before because you are in the public relations field. But Edmund Bernays, who was, by the way, Sigmund Freud's nephew, was an interesting character whose work really changed the fabric of American society. He worked on numerous public relations campaigns. One of them to help the cigarette manufacturers make female smoking acceptable. So he tied it to the idea of suffrage and women leadership and the right to vote. The ideas of Edward Bernays were both controversial and interesting, but no doubt powerful. The luggage industry came to Edward Bernays early on and said, hey, we're worried that we're not selling enough luggage. Can you help us to actually sell more luggage? Because Edward Bernays was the person who would do that. And Edward Bernays developed a way to help the luggage industry sell more luggage. He sent articles to magazines titled, What the Well-Dressed Woman Needs to Wear on a Weekend. And the strategies in these articles that were then published in national magazines included, of course, having multiple wardrobes, which of course would have to be packed in protective luggage. He gave free luggage to movies and to plays. And that luggage could be used as a prop and seen by the audiences in the newly developed Hollywood movie industry. He suggested in his public relations campaigns to health departments that they stress the importance of having their own luggage, each person, not sharing, for hygiene reasons, of course, luggage with other people. He encouraged stores to put luggage in their window displays and show the relationship between new styles of clothing and new luggage styles. He wrote to colleges and to universities to send their new students lists of what they would need, clothing, etc., and the luggage that they would need in order to move onto campuses. He created an industry trade group called the Luggage Information Service. This then could be an easy way for any journalist or salesperson who wanted to know more about luggage to make a phone call and get answers about luggage. He urged architects to build homes with closets big enough to store luggage. He wrote to 66 railway companies, 10 steamship companies, and he urged them to make sure the designers left plenty of room for the luggage that people would need. He lobbied for embassies to increase the free weight allowances for those traveling abroad, and he gave luggage to movie stars to pose with it and to be seen with it. By the way, we see that technique of Edward Bernays still used in the fashion industry, which gives Instagram stars t-shirts, purses, jewelry, etc. We have a whole new industry called influencer. This is really based on the ideas of Edward Bernays. By the way, a controversial figure for some political reasons. A fascinating figure since he was Sigmund Freud's nephew. But nonetheless, in the history of public relations, one of the most influential people. Well, the reason I'm sharing a little bit about Edward Bernays and how it is that he helped the luggage industry to increase their sales and popularize the individual ownership of luggage early in our country's history. I mean, I don't think we'd have Louis Vuitton bags, and I don't think that we would have, Gucci suitcases and laptop cases if in part it wasn't for Edward Bernays. And what we can see is that here is a person who really systemically created patterns of success for persuading large groups of people, societies as a whole, to take actions. How can we put that in the context of the coaching work that we do? Our clients come to us because they want to transform themselves and they want to transform others, but they also want to leave a legacy of success. I wrote a book a few years ago, a book on leadership, where I quoted Randy Dobbs, the author of a book titled Transformational Leadership, who said that good leaders leave behind a cadre of other leaders. This is often done through public relations, through influence on a community scale, or even on, in the case of Edward Bernays, a nationwide scale. We can replicate the success of others in other industries by creating NLP patterns in the current era that help us to help other people and to help ourselves as well, by looking beyond just psychotherapy for solutions to change work. And to all of the exemplars that have truly helped us to create success in our world. I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation. I have no doubt that you did, or you probably wouldn't have stayed around until the very end. I would love it if you would join me for the ICBCH double certification, the ICBCH Professional NLP Practitioner Certification, and the ICBCH Professional Life Coach Certification. It begins next month. Make sure you register now so you can access the early bird materials. You'll find a link right here on this page. You can go to the home page of this website and you can find out all of the information about what is going to be in that course and how you can register for the course and reserve your spot. It is limited to 24 people, and we are coming up on probably about 20 people right now. So if you want one of these spots, you're going to want to claim it this week before class starts, the first week of next month.